This is my 80th video on my work with OO gauge. See part 1 of this series for my reasons for getting into OO gauge when I already had a lot invested in working in N gauge and I didn't really have space available for a large, fully operational OO gauge layout. Also see my lengthy series on my N gauge railway modelling for smaller and more complex scenery and smaller scale trains running. I had originally planned to have this part cover the whole topic of controller options for my Hornby layout, but it started to seem that that was going to get too long and complex, so I'm going to split the topic into a couple of parts. In this video I'm going to recap the basic control of my Hornby layout, and then the main focus of this part will be my experiences with Hornby's HM6000 Bluetooth app-based controller. And spoiler alert, as you may already know, since I've mentioned this briefly from time to time over the months, my experiences with the HM6000 have not really been happy. For a detailed breakdown and demonstration of how the power and control of my Hornby layout work, see part 59 of this series. But just to recap briefly, here's an overview of the layout, taken when I made part 59 a while ago, so quite a number of scenic details have been added since, but the track plan hasn't changed. And here's a key to how the layout is powered. As I say, for full detail see part 59, but the key point here is that there are two control areas drawing their power from separate control circuits. All the areas in yellow on this diagram draw their power from and are controlled by the inner track controller, and all the areas in purple on this diagram draw their power from and are controlled by the outer track controller. So it's basically a two-circuit layout with various switchable sidings, and the turntable, which is part of the inner zone. This is the controller that I bought for this layout when I first set the layout up, an MRC Tech 2 Dual Power 2800. The yellow switches on the black base at top switch power to the switchable sidings of the outer zone, and the yellow Hornby switch at top right controls the rotation of the turntable using power from a separate 12-volt transformer. Generally I've been quite satisfied with this Tech 2 controller. The only actual fault it has shown is that occasionally when you flip the direction switch for one of the circuits from going forwards to backwards or vice versa, you won't get any power, but flipping the switch back and forth again always seems to resume power so far. Another limitation of this controller is that it is rather low power. It can only supply a maximum of about 600 milliamps per circuit according to its specs, and even that is probably a bit generous. Its specs also say that it can only supply up to 14 volts per circuit, and I find that it really doesn't supply more than 12 volts to the track even at full power. In a way this might be good, as it should certainly guard against overloading motors. But even though OO model engines or model motors are rated nominally at 12 volts, you'll find that most controllers provide something closer to 18 volts to the tracks when set to full power, and I've tested some controllers that are putting out over 20 volts to the tracks at full power. I like the control handles on this controller. They're very easy to hold and smooth to operate, and it's easy to tell at a glance what power level they're set at. So really the only features I might like in addition would be possibly a bit more power available, and if it were possible to have easy to operate handheld controllers, that would be great. Okay, now let's move on to the Hornby HM6000 controller. The idea of this is that you connect it up to your tracks, it can power two circuits, and then you can control those circuits using an app on your Apple or Android device, so basically your smartphone or tablet. Shown here is the first HM6000 that I bought back in early summer 2021, when I just received it and fully expected it to work. It came with little two-pronged plugs on the wires that were supposed to plug into Hornby power clips, but actually don't work at all well even plugged into Hornby power clips. Since I wasn't using Hornby power clips, I replaced the plug on one circuit with banana plugs so that I could connect it to the wires on my Bachmann layout. Now, the HM6000 needs to be powered with 15 volts DC, and it doesn't come with a power supply. When I bought mine, even the UK power supplies were unavailable from Hornby, and in any case I'm in Canada, so I would need a North American power supply, input 120 volts 60 cycles, and that certainly wasn't available from Hornby. So I bought a 15 volt power supply on Amazon. This power supply was tested for me by a friend on an oscilloscope, and it seems to be very good quality, supplying a steady 15.1 volts of very well rectified DC. Of course, I needed to plug the power supply into the HM6000, and that proved to be a major headache. The power supply came with adapters for all connectors commonly used in North America, but none of them fitted the HM6000. I was able to determine that the power connector on the HM6000 was designed for a plug with a 9mm barrel and a 3mm internal hole. This kind of plug is almost never used in North America. However, I was able to find a specialty electrical supplier from whom I was able to buy a couple of these plugs, and I fitted one to the output wire of my power supply as seen here. The wires are soldered internally into the plug. Unfortunately, this got me nowhere, as I was never able to get that original HM6000 to come on at all. When I plugged the power into it, the blue LED flashed briefly once, and that was all that happened. The red LED was supposed to come on steady, indicating that the HM6000 was ready for the next step, but that never happened. So my initial HM6000 was basically a brick that never did anything. I bought it from Hatton's, and no blame at all attaches to Hatton's here. They were just selling Hornby products and were always very helpful to me. Sending it back to the UK would have cost me as much as I paid for the controller. One thing you can say about the HM6000 is that it's quite cheap. So I just ordered a second one from Hatton's. I was quite interested in the concept, and I wasn't ready to give up yet. Here's my second HM6000. I've taken off the plugs that came on the wires, as those would be useless to me, and frankly they didn't even work with Hornby power clips when I tried them, producing an intermittent connection at best. I've replaced the plugs with crocodile clips. This HM6000 did come on properly when I plugged the power into it, showing a steady red LED. You need to download the Hornby HMDC app to control the HM6000. I didn't have any Apple devices, but I had a couple of Android tablets, and I downloaded and installed the HMDC app on both of those. However, despite multiple tries, I could never get the app to work with the HM6000 on either tablet. On my newer Asus tablet, the HMDC app simply would never recognize the existence of the HM6000 at all. On my older RCA tablet, the app did connect to the HM6000, but when I turned up the power in the track control screen of the app, no power was actually supplied by the HM6000 to the tracks. I rather gave up at that point and put both HM6000s aside. However, towards the end of 2021, I got a new Android smartphone, a Moto G Power. And when I got around to installing and trying the HMDC app on that phone, it actually finally worked and allowed me to control locos. So, after all these months of effort, I can finally sort of demonstrate an HM6000 working with my Hornby layout. Here's the track control screen of the HMDC control app on my Moto G Power phone. Unfortunately, it won't really fit properly onto the screen of the phone, so you have to scroll up and down in order to see the controls for both tracks, which is a fairly severe limitation. If you start the app with the phone on its side, it's even worse, since the app doesn't adjust its screen properly when you rotate the phone, and you can hardly see anything at all if you start the app with the phone sideways. To fix that, you have to kill the app and then restart it again with the phone upright. Here I've scrolled down so that you can see the controls for Circuit 2, but now you can't see the controls for Circuit 1. I get the impression that this app was developed without much testing on different devices, so if it will work at all on your device is very much pot luck, and if it does work, how well it will work is also very questionable. Okay, so here's how the control of my Hornby layout was set up. I labelled the wires before detaching them from the Tech2 controller to make setting them up with the HM6000 simpler. So we have the wires for the inner zone I1 and I2 on the left, and the wires for the outer zone O1 and O2 on the right. The outer zone connections are more complicated because of the switchable power feeds to the left siding and the head shunt. I connected the output wires from the HM6000 to the input wires for the layout using the crocodile clips I'd fitted. Since this was just intended to be a temporary experiment, I just placed pieces of pink foam between the wires to separate them. Now I was ready to test operating the layout with the HM6000. So now let's see that. Okay, I'm going to see if I can manage somehow or other to demonstrate, oh for goodness sake, this whatnot, this confounded, now how can I even turn it on with all this camera stuff in the way? Yeah, nearly. There we go. Okay, sorry, as I put the camera in the way so I couldn't even get at it. Now we've got the HM6000 is waiting for to connect. So we'll try and run the perishing HMDC app. Okay. So that's the HMDC app. Now I've got to try and persuade it, and believe me, it is a persuasion, to connect, which it generally doesn't like to do. Nope, see, it keeps saying error. And this is typically the way you have to try this like 12 or 15 times. Oh, it might be working my second time now. Yes, it worked. Well, so it only took me 2 tries to get it to connect then, which was very good. Usually it takes way more than 2 tries to get it to connect, but it is in fact connected now. Now you'll notice that on my phone I can't see both circuits at the same... Oh, for goodness sake. I find it very hard to do this. See, that's the second circuit, that's the outside, and that's the inside. I can't get them both on the screen at the same time because the screen isn't big enough. I wanted to do this on my tablet, but the HM6000 will never ever connect to either of my tablets at all. The sound is not working today, I don't think. Nope. For some reason the sound is not working today and I can't figure out why not. I've had the sound working in the past. Today it should be making some noises now, because I just turned the sound on, but it's not working. Nope, that should whistle, but it's not working. Don't know why the sound isn't working. I don't think I've got the strength to try and figure out why the sound isn't working at the moment. It has worked on occasions in the past. It just arbitrarily, for some reason, doesn't want to work today. Perhaps I've somehow accidentally turned some mute setting on my phone on. Not that I can see, but... What's that? Ah, maybe that was it. Okay. Okay, so I think I did in fact have a mute setting turned on my phone. There you go, yes. Didn't mean to. So there we go, we got some sound vaguely. That's what the sound does, that's all the sound does. I've got it on a Bluetooth speaker, and that's as high as the volume goes. Anyway, good, so there you've got sound. Okay, so now, let's try. It makes me nervous because the train will sometimes go too fast, and I'm trying to... There you go. I can't imagine ever actually using this thing on the phone to control a train at a railway. It's just far too difficult for me anyway. That's going. I don't want to make it go any faster because we don't want to derail it. And we'll bring it round and we'll try and break it. Okay, so now let's see if we can try the other circuit. Unfortunately, as I say, we can't see both circuits at once. We'll turn sound for the other circuit on. There we go. Maybe need a bit more power than that for that one. The control isn't very fine though, see now I got a bit more power than I want. see if we can get the other circuit going slightly. Can't see them both at once, but if I hit that emergency stop at the bottom, that should stop both of them. The outside one's going a bit too slowly, the inside's the one going a bit too fast, but okay, I'm going to hit emergency stop. There you go. And they both stop, although I noticed the sound, interestingly, although I've stopped them, they've still got their settings, and the sound is still going as if they were going. So the emergency stop doesn't actually stop them, it just pauses everything. And then to do anything after that you have to resume, and then this is outside again. Well, there you go. That's about as good as I've managed to get with the HM6000. And it took me literally months after I bought the first one to get to this point. But essentially I've pretty much given up. I wouldn't actually use it for anything, I don't think. Not myself, because it's just too awkward. But it is working within the meaning of the act now. If I could get it working on my tablet, you know, so I can actually see the whole screen at a time and things, and I got a bigger screen to work with, maybe I might use it. It just won't work on my tablet. I can't get the app to connect to the controller at all on either of my two Android tablets. So that's it, basically. That's the best I can do with it.